Let us talk about leak testing of the endoscope. Irrespective of what endoscope you use, you should follow the manufacturer's instructions for use. Leak testing is the most critical step. It is the first step that happens once you bring the endoscope from the procedure room after pre-cleaning it before it goes for manual cleaning. The purpose of a leak test is to find out if the scope has any leaks. And if you do not perform the leak test or you do not perform the leak test properly, you could miss the leaks that could lead to water damage of the scope, and water damage of the scope could be costly, about thousands of dollars of repair costs need to be borne by the endoscopy unit. In addition, water damage to the scope could serve as a reservoir for infection and patients could get infected. If that happens, it could lead to legal problems to the endoscopy unit. So, make sure you do the leak test and you do it properly. And before you go that route, you should wear full PPE, hairnet, mask, goggles or face shield, gown and gloves. And when it comes to the leak test, there are three different types of leak tests: dry mechanical leak test, dry manual leak test, wet manual leak test. Let us talk about dry mechanical leak test. This is probably most often used in a lot of endoscopy centers. Before you do the dry mechanical leak test, you need to prepare the endoscope for the leak test. And what does this involve? You need to remove all detachable parts: suction valve, air water valve, and the biopsy cap. And then turn to the other end of the scope and hook the leak testing valve to the machine. And if your scope is in a container, make sure it is not overcoiled, as this could prevent you from detecting the leak. So make sure you do that. So now it is all set. You press the start button and wait for the machine to do the leak test. During this time, you need to turn the knobs up, down, right, left, and also press on different buttons: image capture, freeze, NBI, whatever buttons are on the top of the scope, because they have O-rings, and it is important to do this to find out if there is a leak. If the test comes back as pass, that is good news. You could take the scope to manual cleaning. On the other hand, you do the leak test, but the test comes back as fail. Then you cannot take the scope for manual cleaning. Instead, you go back and check your connections. The tubing connections from the machine to the scope, and make sure that they are not leaky and properly connected. And then you come back and repeat the test. If it is pass, you can take it to the manual cleaning. If it is a fail, then you cannot take it to the manual cleaning and you have to do something else. At this stage, you go back and press on constant air so that there is a constant pressure in the scope, and then you check the scope. especially the bending section of the scope. If the bending section inflates, then you can take that scope, submerge it under water, clean it, and then send it to the manufacturer for repair. And follow the manufacturer's instructions for use. On the other hand, under constant pressure, there is no distension of the distal end, and there is a hole. Do not submerge it under water. Instead, just hand clean it and send it for repair. Again, follow the instructions for use. So, say for example, you pass the test, the leak test pass, you go to the manual cleaning, and we'll talk about it later. And let's talk about other types of leak testing. Dry manual leak testing. Again, you prepare the scope by removing all detachable parts, hook it up to the device for leak testing, and then start the air on, and there is a pressurized air that brings the pressure to a certain level. You move the knobs and then see if the pressure is maintained. If the pressure is maintained, that means the leak test is a pass. If the pressure drops, it is a fail. If it is failed, you send a device for repair. But sometimes if you want, you could do a little more, that is a wet manual leak testing. Again, the steps are the same. Remove all detachable parts. If it is a particular scope, like an ERCP scope or a US scope that needs a water resistant cap, you put it on before you submerge it under water. So, the pressure is on, the air pressure is on during the leak test, and under the water you check for any leaks. You also infuse 60 cc's of water through the suction port and move up, down, right, left knobs, press on the different knobs for image capture, etc., and then look for any air bubbles or leaks. If you don't see any, you keep the air pressure on and then remove the device out of the water, and then you can release the air pressure. If there is a leak, you follow the manufacturer's instructions and prepare the scope and send it for repair. So, let us look at a few errors and their impact. One thing is, when you do underwater leak test, you should not put any detergent into the water, because the bubbles from the detergent would not allow you to find the leak. And if you are in a rush and do not take enough time for the leak test, then a small leak may not be detected unless you give enough time, and then you can miss a leak. If you do not move the scope tip right, left, up, down, and that is failing to angulate the scope, again small leaks may be missed, and especially if the bending section is not stretched. So, if you miss detecting a leak, water leaks into the scope, causes water damage, and it serves as a source for infection. I hope this video is useful and provides an overview about the leak test. Thank you.